Show. I'm Don.
And I'm Mike, and this time the boys are going to talk about lunar cycles, Don. We're going to talk about Doctor Who Series 8, Episode 7, Kill the Moon.
What a great name. As soon as I saw the name, I knew that I liked the episode. It's up there with Dinosaurs on a Spaceship as one of my favorite episode titles.
Yeah, and what we can't talk about is its pro-choice or pro-life decision. Really. This is the last I want to hear about it, even though it's the one thing that we could talk for an hour and a half about. We're not going to talk about it because it's taboo.
Politics and Doctor Who, and it is fascinating. So now that we've said that, go and think about it and talk about it amongst yourselves, and we'll go on and talk about the other parts of the episode. Consider
that the gentleman stepped out of the decision. Consider that the planet Earth stepped into the decision. Consider, Don, that there's no mother around.
None.
Consider that the woman from the present, whose planet lies in the balance, has the decision robbed from her.
She doesn't get to.
It's a complicated episode. I want to talk about it, but we can't talk about it, Don. Consider that the decision is robbed from her by two women from a past where they don't have the problem with the moon blowing up. Consider. But we are not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about the decision that they made or what side we think it falls on, or the decision of the Earth and what side that would have fallen on, or the decision of who else was it? The doctor. No, the doctor. What was he? Had no. He ran, Don.
That's right. He left it to the women.
He bolted like a
woman?
a man does.
A young woman, a middle-aged woman, and an older woman. Not even middle-aged, but a young girl.
Yeah,
a young woman and an older woman.
It's just
and the planet Earth.
This is a complicated episode.
It is. It's very, very layered and very deep, and I would be shocked even if none of it was sanctioned.
Doesn't the episode?
A lot of opinions.
Doesn't the episode start with Sarah yelling into the camera, yelling into the eyes of the audience, "We have a choice to make"?
I believe.
Isn't that the exact word she uses?
Yeah. We have 45 minutes to make it.
We're not qualified, Don.
We're not. We're not going to. No.
This is a complicated episode to discuss, and there's no subtext. The subtext we can't talk about. So,
but the one subtext, and then before we're done not talking about the episode, I also want to point out, like you pointed out at the beginning of the episode, let's point out the title one last time. What was the title of the episode again?
Kill the Moon.
All right, very well. Go ahead. While not talking,
it's not even like the smile on my face is that I'm locking up because I've never seen it. I've never seen television quite like this, and I feel like it was anyway. One of the things I thought was cool is that the Doctor's relationship to Clara continues to evolve.
Yeah, and it very much plays off of something I talked about in our last review about how in the last episode it ended with her almost like absorbing everyone's opinions about what she should do and how she should feel and what they want for her. And I remember saying, I wonder when we're going to get to her acting on it, and we get it this time. This episode is full of it, and it ends strong.
Yeah, like it was really the last. It's the dialogue between Clara and the Doctor at the end of the episode, where she basically says to him what almost probably all of the companions who have ever walked with him have wanted to say, and it's to sort of attack him on his superior position.
Yeah.
No matter, even though, like, obviously we've seen the Doctor be the very gentle character that he was in Matt Smith and David Tennant. I think Matt Smith being the most benign of the Doctors, but seeing her that she's crying. I mean, some of her best acting, on top of the fact that it's some of the most challenging dialogue. I mean, even when the Doctor's defending her, he says, "I let you make the decision for yourself." Like It's your world. I left you. I trusted you. And she just feels abandonment. And you sort of see it from both perspectives. I mean, I certainly did, because I kept thinking, well, I wish she could understand what he's saying, but I wish he could understand what she's saying. And it was heartbreaking. And it was, again, it's like last time we talked about, it's the beginning of the end of Clara's journeys with him. And it makes me wonder if they're going to end on a sour note.
Yeah, or how they're going to reconcile. I mean, the good thing is the episode ends with Danny telling her, "You still care, so it's not over." And but it's such a powerful thing, because I was so conflicted. I mean, because the whole time I'm thinking the doctor did the right thing, and even earlier in the episode when he's like, "There are things I cannot get involved with. I'm just not allowed. It's not my place." And then she calls him out on his horse crap, because he's constantly involving himself in similar decisions all of the time.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, this is a new doctor. This isn't Matt Smith doctor. This isn't the 10th doctor. This isn't the 9th doctor. This is the 12th doctor, and he does what he does. And one of the other things, I mean, the acting in the last 10 minutes is just stellar. And even Capaldi, when he's reacting to her, you're seeing in him what I've seen in other movies and I've seen human beings do, which is you can see on his face his realization, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah.
And because he is this irascible, unpleasant, he really never gives her a break, like sort of, and doesn't give anyone a break. And know-it-all, bossy guy that never isn't kidding. Like the 10th Doctor and the 11th Doctor would do that, but there was sort of a joyous like grin to them, saying, "I'm the best there is." When this Doctor says it, he means it, and he really. And when she accuses him of treating her, with the training wheels and smacking her on the backside and saying, "Go off now," he is being kind of condescending, and he is treating her that way. And the look on his face of "what have I done" is so compelling, because of this opportunity of having a new Doctor with a new personality have to realize his own limitations.
Yeah, it was great to see an area that has been largely unexplored in the relationships that are have been visible on the TV show. Like just the nature of what they go through throughout the episode. I mean, when he abandons them and says he's not helping make the decision, then he actually leaves in the TARDIS. And he's left Clara holding the bag on a number of occasions. Like there's that moment where he jumps into the pit.
Yeah.
And he's in the spacesuit and he says, "I'll be back." And she kind of tells him not to, and then he goes anyway. And the astronaut says to Clara, "Will he be back?" And she says something like, "I suppose so," or "He usually is," or whatever. And at that moment, it's kind of light, but it's also kind of dark. I mean, he's left her with this girl she's in charge of. The student is back safely on the TARDIS, but still unsafely on a moon that's collapsing. And it's just bold. It's actually pushing the envelope more than I sort of was asking for when I heard that the show was going to take a new turn and that the Doctor was going to be difficult. I think that's the word that Moffat had used in the advent of this season. And he is. I really like that he makes me uncomfortable.
One of the other things that's really well done about the story, also another thing I said last week when we did our review, I said I would like to see more of Courtney, and I thought it was really cool that there she was, because I didn't watch the trailers, I didn't know it was coming, so it was like, oh look, I said I wanted more Courtney, and here's a whole episode of her. But there's this cool. It's one of the things that's great when writers do it, is there's this meta subtext of the Doctor, the way the Doctor treats Courtney, and sometimes he's kind, and other times he's not. And sometimes he never really cares about her feelings, but when he's kind, you wonder if he's just being condescending. And it was a really interesting mirror to his relationship with Clara, because he's a little different with Clara, but is he? And it's so well done. I mean, and then the drama and the excitement of the episode was really cool. It was pulse pounding. It was exciting. They got to do their sort of aliens thing, which I like whenever Doctor Who gets to do. It was such a solid, well-rounded, thought-provoking episode.
Can you tell me, do you know, so Clara, I think Clara, they've done a great job of establishing the importance of her character in the entire mythology of Doctor Who, in that she's basically been recurring throughout his life and saving him. Mm-hmm. And even though they only demonstrated it really in the one episode where they established that, they really haven't had to do much of it before or since. But is the Clara that we're with right now, is she which one is she? There's the Clara that ran into that beam and was sort of separated across time.
He saves her. That Clara is the same Clara. So the Clara that we're with is the one that the doctor finds in the present day, when in the episode where they're riding the motorcycle up the side of the mountain, and
Right.
she gets a phone call and she's babysitting.
Yeah.
That's the Clara we're still with. So once they latched onto her, they have not let go. So we had seen Clara, two different Claras before that. We saw the Dalek Clara and we saw the winter Christmas episode Clara. And then the one that he's with now is still the same one, because the one that goes into the beam he rescues, because he's holding her rescued body when he sees the war doctor.
Right. Okay, that's right. Yeah, because they're in that like weird space inside him or some hokum. Okay, and the only other Claras we've seen beyond the ones you just mentioned are the ones in the montage where we see her interacting with like the first Doctor, for instance.
Yeah, and we don't get to know their different natures, other than we know that the two previous Claras we saw all had like slightly different usages of their name, and she had slightly different personalities. And
Right.
in one case, she was an artist, and in another case she was a school marm or whatever. She took care of kids. Right.
And then the other ones we see even more vaguely, just that she was present throughout his life.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's fine. So then essentially we've seen three Claras, and this is the one that has been there since in modern times.
Yeah, the one that was there, all, the last half of last season and all of this season is the
Okay.
same one.
So then the reason I asked that is, I guess she knows what she's been to the Doctor. She's aware of her role and her sacrifice.
Yeah, because he's called her his impossible girl a bunch of times and things like that. So that's understood between them. Although I don't think she fully understands. I don't get the impression she fully understands it, because it's not like she's done it herself.
Right. But she was willing to. She stepped into that knowing that she's sacrificing her life, and she had the benefit of surviving it. But she had done it with the idea of not surviving it.
Yeah.
So she has been in many ways more helpful and important to him than he could be to her, because there's no indication, and it's kind of funny that one line where she says, "I'm going to hit you so hard you'll regenerate." I mean, that's a first, right? Like that was fantastic.
That was great.
But that reminds you of the fact that she can step into this beam and expect to die, and she'd be willing to do that for the Doctor. The Doctor's never sacrificed his life for her, in the sense that his everlasting life.
Yeah, certainly, and certainly not this incarnation.
Yeah. So so her betrayal at him, that's the whole reason I asked all that, was so that I could really understand why she, more than any of his other companions, would be in a position to feel as betrayed as she is by him. And my mind.
One-sided relationship in this case, and it's funny that having this conversation has really made me think about it. But you're right, because Martha does. I mean, the companions have regularly saved the Doctor. Like Martha saved the Doctor, Donna saved the universe. But at the same time, in every one of those cases, there were reciprocating sort of sacrifices and salvations. And you're right, the Doctor has yet to do in either the 11th or 12th incarnation, even though he does take a risk to save her. I mean, he takes a huge risk in his 11th incarnation to save her from going into that time thing, but it all worked out in the end. So he did take a sacrifice then, but as in this current incarnation, he hasn't. I mean, he's left her behind, and it all worked out in the end, and he just had that super confidence, like in Time Heist and in the first episode with the two of them, when he leaves her in the room and locks her in and says, "I'll be back." I don't even know if he says, "I'll be back." He just says, "I need to go. Like, it's more important that I get away."
Yeah, he does not say he'll be back.
Yeah, so like it's a very and this is a toying thing.
In fact, she says, "Give me the sonic screwdriver," and he says, "I might need it."
Yeah, and that's this recurring thing, and I really am curious to see, because it might. I mean, really, the lesson that the Doctor has to learn, because in the end, this is the Doctor's story. It might be interesting to tie into the departure of Clara. Could have a lot to do with him having to realize that he has to be a different person.
I hope it's not as sad. I mean, it'll be bittersweet because you're saying goodbye to somebody, but I really hope that it doesn't end badly with them. It would be an opportunity that they've never really explored. I mean, there's, I know there's the Sarah Jane, he just left her, but that was, I think, bad writing.
Yeah.
And then they addressed it later and when they brought her back. But the idea of an actual departure where they could end on bad terms is totally within the realm of possibility this season, and that would be tough to watch. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens.
Yeah, and it would be, I mean, I even think in some ways it would be good for the greater story of a whole. This was the one that the doctor burned.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because I mean, I think the one time Tegan left, they sort of left, and I know Adric just was demanding to leave, but they never pulled the trigger and went all the way with it. And I'll be curious to see, because like you said, this episode went even further than you ever expected. I now have the feeling that this show does have the confidence to have them break up in a hostile way.
Yeah.
And leave it that way and not undo it, unless Moffat does that thing that Davies did, which I would never be against in going into the to his leaving the show and bringing everybody back, because he did bring Amy back for Matt Smith's last episode. So, I mean, maybe he'll do that, but that'll be fun to look forward to. That's not a bad thing, but it is. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens next. I mean, it looks like I did see the trailer for next week's episode. It looks more like a one-shot, and it looks like a fun one. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with this show and how it works out with her and the doctor. And because we're not far off. I mean, it's episode 7. I guess there's 13 episodes, and the Christmas episode's the last one. So
I will say that this episode, if it intended to, or let's put it this way, if it intended to broach the subject that it seemed to broach to me, and take the positions that it seemed to take to me, I'm shocked. If it didn't, and they somehow stumbled into taking, ending up with that, analogy, that might be the wrong word, then what an amazing series of, missteps.
it might also be something that maybe because this isn't an American show, and maybe things aren't as, maybe there's more room where the show comes from to show sort of different opinions, and maybe it's not as remarkable as it seems to us.
Well,
if it is what we think it's about,
it wouldn't.
It seems to.
It wouldn't be in the sense that science fiction has, or at least we're told, has always patted itself on the back for taking social positions and exposing them in unique and different ways. And we heard that about Star Trek all the time. And I've never known if it was true or if it was just in retrospect. I mean, it's hard to know, because I just saw that show out of time. I mean, I saw it after, it had been off the air for, a decade. So it would be, it's certainly possible.
Right.
It's just interesting that I watched it and I sat there thinking, wow, this is, anyway, bold.
Yeah, definitely. And for Star Trek, you're right. Like I've read a really good book about it, and what it did was, because if you weren't there at the time, it did do a really good job of explaining like just how remarkable a lot of the things the original Star Trek show did. And so I think in that case, it definitely was doing that. But other than that, I don't know that other science fiction is really doing that. And obviously there's 1984 and things like that, and I guess in Brave New World. So, but at the same time, and it's probably the subject for a different discussion or an episode of our longer show, is I kind of wish science fiction would get off of its soapbox and just be science fiction more often. But again, if that's a tool that it's used for, and it's everything is there in the toolbox. But I hate being preached to, which is what's so interesting. And Doctor Who never does. I mean, that's the other thing, is if there is any real message, Doctor Who will do the simple, straightforward bumper sticker preaching about war and killing, and it's always contradictory because the doctor says I hate war, and then he'll blow up a spaceship full of people. So it's more about him just chanting I hate guns and then never using one, but letting other people use them on his behalf and stuff. But I mean, that's the extent to which Doctor Who's political, or it'll make some like cheap environmental message sort of bumper sticker slogan. But by and large, it's not a deep thinking and political show. And if this episode if it either snuck by, or like you said, if it's an amazing series of coincidences that ended up making it something that two different people who saw it apart and didn't talk about it until today saw, including my wife, it's just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially I don't necessarily. I have a. Here we are again. All right. I'll let David Moffat do the talking.
Yeah, we'll let David Moffat and Peter Clara and everybody else.
Peter Capaldi.
Yeah. All right. That's our episode. We'll see you next week for Mummy on the Orient Express.
Uh-oh.
Bye-bye.